We have a question about how do we tell the difference between first cutting and second cutting. Our hay, we take off ourselves. I don't buy hay unless I absolutely have to. So we have our own hay fields, we have our own hay bine, rake, baler, bale wagons, all that stuff. First cutting is the first cutting of the year. So we are going to cut hay minimum of 3 times, sometimes 4 if the weather hits right throughout the year. The first cutting for us comes off of the field around June 5th to June 10th. And then the second cutting will come off about 30 days later. The third cutting about 30 days after that. And if weather is good, we can sneak a 4th cutting. I prefer to feed second cutting, but we do feed a lot of first as well. The cutting that you feed is going to be dependent on the type of horse that you have, its nutritional needs, its age, its activity level. There's a whole lot to consider. What we feed is an equine blend of grass and alfalfa. I do feed alfalfa. Every time you cut the hay, the grass content gets less and the alfalfa concentration gets higher. So our first cutting is this lighter green color. This has alfalfa in it, but it is a lighter green color. This comes off that June 5th to June 10th. So beginning of July, about 30 days after, is when we're gonna take off this. This is our second cutting. This is much higher in alfalfa, much leafier. It is softer, it's not as sticky. Sticky meaning like think of sticks. So it's just softer, it's more palatable, I guess maybe is the right word, but it's higher alfalfa. We call this candy. So Mama really likes this. This is pretty much what I like to feed. It keeps enough weight on my horses. They don't have any health concerns or dietary restrictions or anything like that, so I can feed this just fine. Now if once we get third cutting off, I will feed second and third cutting in the winter. Third cutting is even richer, so it has more protein in it, which means I don't feed any grain. So now that I am feeding primarily second cutting, I don't have any grain in the barn for my horses, period, because they don't need it. We were feeding Mama Ember like a grain because she's nursing, so she needs those extra calories with the amount of food that Harvey is consuming off of her every single day, but she doesn't need it now that we have second cutting coming. So if you look at the two of these together, you can see that the first cutting is obviously lighter. The second cutting is darker. I know the difference in my barn because I know which one is in which wagon. So I know that's first, I know that's second. And then when we take third off, third will probably just get mixed in the wagon either with first or with second because I only have 2 wagons. We might empty a wagon, so then all the third is in a wagon. But we just keep track of it throughout the year so we know which bales are which, but I can generally tell by looking at the bale which cutting that it is. This year was not a super good year for hay. So second cutting, there's usually a drought, and a lot of times we don't get a lot of second cutting. This year it rained excessively, like a lot, and we didn't have a window to get our second cutting off. So when we took second cutting off, it was past maturity, meaning it had already flowered. I like to take my hay off right before the alfalfa gets these purple flowers on it. Once it gets the purple flowers, it starts to lose its nutrition. So you want to take it off right before or right as it is flowering. And this is in my area in Michigan, so in mid-Michigan. My second cutting didn't come off until my third cutting was supposed to come off, like premier. So it was end of July, I believe, when we took off our second cutting. So it was way late. It was way beyond maturity for me. But it's still really good hay. It's just not at peak productivity the way I would prefer it. But we call second cutting candy. Third cutting is definitely candy. By the time we would get to a fourth cutting, it is pretty much pure alfalfa. That stuff is rich. Like my fourth cutting coming off of my field is rich, and I would pretty much sell it as straight alfalfa if I ever needed to. But with Harvey, because he is growing and we don't want to push his growth because he can damage his joints, we don't want him to grow too fast. That was part of Taz's problem. He grew too fast and he got too straight up. And that accompanied with the club hooves on him just made it for a recipe of disaster. and he got, you know, the tight tendons that he had to have surgery on. So with Harvey, I'm very mindful of that going into it with him. He's already growing super, super fast. So when he is with Mama, when he's not separated from her, it's pretty much first cutting only. I will give a little sliver of second cutting, but otherwise it is straight first cutting. And Taz is pretty much on like a 75-25 mixture. He gets mostly second cutting and then just a little bit of first cutting. So once we get third cutting in the barn, I may sell some of my first cutting because I really wouldn't need it all. I really only need some for Harvey to get him through so he doesn't grow so fast. But I primarily feed second cutting, so that stuff goes nowhere. I keep all of my second cutting. So that's how I tell the difference between the hay cuttings. That's a little bit of information about them and why I feed them. Boils down to nutrition and what your horses need. If you have a hard keeper, you're going to be looking at feeding a lot more protein to keep that top line nice. I prefer my horses to be slightly overweight. I don't want a horse that is underweight. So like when I look at Mama right now, Harvey's really starting to suck calories off of her. So I'm really, when she's by herself, when they're separated, she's on straight second cutting now because I'm pushing those calories into her. It's super important that she maintains weight. So if you have a hard keeper, you're gonna feed something richer or more of a higher quality hay, not just grass. If you have a 15-year-old pasture pet that just hangs out back, nobody rides it, you occasionally take it for walks, and you like to feed it carrots, you're probably just gonna give it grass hay because it's not really doing anything. So the type of hay you feed is truly dependent on your horse's health needs and their activity level. Lots of things go into play there. You know, there's older horses that don't have teeth, so they really can't have hay. They pretty much just sound like a mash senior feed. So really is dependent upon your horse, but that's some information about what I'm feeding my horses. I hope that it helped you understand a little bit more.